Wonderful to be here with you today, Amelia. I've been looking forward to this conversation a lot, with anticipation, a bit of trepidation as well, given the quality and clarity and the directness of your insights that I read online, literally on a daily basis. You are a brilliant entrepreneur, marketeer, thought leader, and influencer. You are the CEO of the number one personal branding company, Clout, which is absolutely flying from what I see and read and sense since you launched it in 2020. So, of course, today we are going to be talking about personal branding, how leaders can and should develop their personal brand and why it matters and why they need to get over perhaps some issues they have about personal branding. And we're also going to talk about entrepreneurship and building businesses, given your own success and a failure, I think, earlier on in your career, and also perhaps some management myths and leadership myths that you regularly call out as well. So we've got a fun-packed agenda, but I'm very grateful for you coming onto the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Gosh, what an intro. I'm blushing.
It's all honest and accurate. At least that's what I think. So, personal branding. If you're in a big organization, personal branding is one of those topics that, if you raise it or if you develop a personal brand, it can often be seen as a bit of an act of disservice or disloyalty. It's like you should, serve the mothership as opposed to focusing on your own personal brand. What are people getting wrong when they espouse those sorts of comments or make those sort of comments?
Yeah, look, I think the key thing with personal branding is a lot of people think that it is personal, which it is. However, the reason why you should be building a personal brand and why executives particularly should be building their personal brand is the impact that it has on the company brand. So individuals receive up to 561% more reach with their posts than the company does with theirs. Engagement rates, I think, are 8 times higher on posts shared by employees versus those that are shared by companies. Brand messages, I think, is also a very important thing, which is something that most internal comms teams are so hell-bent on getting everyone to share. It's like, share our brand message, share our core reason for existing, are shared 24 times more frequently when they're shared by a personal brand than they are by a company brand, which all obviously adds up into a lot of attention, a lot of trust, a lot of authority, but more importantly, it adds up to a lot of leads and a lot of business. 7 times, I think, more frequently, leads convert when they come through a personal brand versus a company brand or website. And that's total, right? So you add up cold calling, inbound leads through a website, all of those things. Leads that come through a personal brand convert 7 times more frequently than all those other leads. So why should you be doing it? I mean, do you want to make more money? Like, do you want to be increasing your margin? Do you want to be using the people who are currently already on payroll to market your business for no further cost to yourself? I mean, if you can spend 10, 15, 20,000 pounds a month on a marketing agency that brings you no ROI, I think you can encourage your team to spend 5 minutes a day posting some content on LinkedIn.
I have to say, you reel through those stats there, and it's really, really compelling. So I wonder what stops people then? Because I've worked in one large organization and worked with many, many large organizations where, frankly, you're a bit of a mouthpiece for the corporate brand. You might put your own one-liner on the top of it, but you're given content and you have to push it out. And it's not a rule, but it's a sort of given. Hence, whether it's a consultancy or corporate, you see about 20 of the same thing. You think, please put some personality on it. So what gets in the way? If those stats are so compelling, it's so obvious from a business perspective, why are people effectively stopping people express themselves and they're developing their own personal brand?
Yeah, look, I think there's a few things. I mean, to your point about, marketing asking you to push content out there, like how much of that content were you excited to share? I imagine it was very limited in the numbers, right? You're like, oh yes, I'm very excited to share this thing that marketing has approved.
But true.
Yeah. But look, I think the general thing is businesses typically are afraid to empower the people already within the organization to build their personal brand for a number of different reasons. I think the first is driven by fear, because they feel as though if their team are being encouraged to build their personal brand, that is going to in some way encourage them to be poached. Newsflash, if your team can be poached by being more visible, that's not because they're posting content, it's because you're not a good enough employer for them. And that is the answer that I always give people, is you don't have a problem with people posting content, you have a problem with you managing your people, or you've hired the wrong people, right? So this fear mindset of we can't be posting content just in case someone poaches them, if you're worried about them leaving in that way, then I'd spend more of that energy focused on what you can be doing to be a better employer.
Yeah, that's a great point.
The second thing that people find difficult to kind of overcome when empowering their team to do this is this sort of like control thing. We must control the brand message. We must control what is said, what is not. Cool. Build a framework. What's the framework? What framework can people operate within, and then give them freedom within the framework. So a framework that I always give people, which is a really simple one to follow, is what are your company values? What are your company values? Like, is it honesty? Is it integrity? Is it fine? And do you need to have a policy around political stuff? That's okay. You can do that. If you're a
Yes.
consultancy, there are many consultancies that absolutely do not want to be commenting on geopolitics for obvious reasons. Cool. Have a one line about that. We don't comment on geopolitics unless we are commenting it from an objective perspective of how it's going to impact our customer. For example, hypothetically, the Israel-Palestine issue. That might be impacting a particular market that you might work in. And so
Yes.
if your company's saying we cannot comment on politics, you're doing your clients a disservice by not telling them how it's impacting that market. So the one line in your social media policy should be, when you're commenting on these things, to say, from a perspective of a consultant in this industry, this is how this particular incident is affecting you. There's no politics in that. There is no opinion in that. You're not aligning yourself to anyone, but you are informing your customer of exactly what they need to know and positioning yourself as an authority. So give people a framework, give them a freedom within that framework, because it's no good in hiring someone like me, which I do. I often go into consultancies, the big consultancies, and train people on this. There's no point in having me come in and go, come on guys, like let's post content. And then you go, oh, but we can't post that content. Like, because people will just go, cool, well, we don't post anything because I don't want to get in trouble. To give them a framework. And then the third reason why people don't want their employees to do this is their leadership. It's the ego. It's the, I want to control everything, that everything's going out and what people are saying. And oh my God, they can't say that. Just let people live. If you've hired them for the values of the business, if you've hired them to do the job that you've hired them to do, trust. Like, look, I would be a lot more upset if my team said the wrong thing to a client than if they said the wrong thing online.
Yeah, sure.
I would be much more upset. Just look, they're smart, intelligent people. The likelihood of someone saying the wrong thing online that's going to mess you up or mess your business up or make you look bad, unless you're doing bad things, is very, very small.
And you can respond. I mean, you've had some moments, I've had a few myself, where you say things and you look back and say, you know what, didn't get the tonality right, didn't get the point. Yeah. As long as you respond and fess up, as it were, I think most people forgive you for that.
It's being having humility, which hopefully we all have to a degree.
Yeah, I think it has to be real. But yeah, there's quite a lot of fake stuff out there. But so imagine you are in an organization where the boundaries are clear. You have got that trust. You have got that empowerment. But frankly, you haven't used that muscle for a while. You've been doing your job, but you sort of think there's an opportunity to express yourself on some topics. Where do you start? How do you sort of warm yourself up?
It's a good question. I think you have to start with what your goal is, if I'm honest. I think there's a lot of people that kind of go, you have to work out what to be known for. And like, that's part of it. But more importantly, what is your goal? Fast forward 12 months, what would success look like to you? Is it new opportunities to work somewhere else? Is it to empower your team to be a little bit more visible online? Is it to drive inbound leads? Is it all of the above? What is the goal? And that's the first thing. And then we go to the next stage, which is, okay, so to achieve that goal, what audience do I need to attract? So let's use the example of leads, right? Generating new business, which is quite often why people want to do this, right? My business is 100% inbound. And we work with everyone from enterprise billion-dollar organizations all the way down to startup founders. So we have a real diversity of client that we work with, but we're all inbound. So this is what I'm saying about the audience piece. Identify who your audience is. Who are they? CEO? Are they a marketing manager? Are they a DevOps person? Like, what are they? Who is that person? But that audience needs to be related to achieving your goal. So if your goal is to sell, okay, so who makes the buying decision to buy? Okay, so now that's your audience. Great. We now have the audience. The next level down from that is, what do you want to be known for? So it shouldn't start with what do you want to be known for. It should start with your goals. Then you can work out who your audience is. And then from your audience, you can work out what you want to be known for to your audience to achieve that goal. So if the sales is the goal, chief marketing officer, for example, is your audience. You want to be known as a person who champions chief marketing officers and highlights things that are interesting to them and relevant to them and going to make their life easier in relation to the product or service that you sell. Boom, personal branding strategy 101. And if you want to kind of get a deeper dive into that, I wrote an article actually on Medium. Obviously, it's not gated, so I'm not trying to sell anyone anything. You can go on Google and find it. But I've broken down exactly step by step how to do that in a 12-minute read document, which might be quite helpful.
That's incredibly powerful. And breaking it down, being really clear, and probably asking yourself some questions you should be asking yourself anyway. What are you in business for, and how do you do it, whether it's online or not? So I think it's very powerful. I mean, one thing you do, generously and very openly, is you do sort of set out the way you do business, right? How you go about personal branding. For some people, that will be a shock because it's like, oh, no, it's my IP, I'm proprietary and so on. But you're very open, right? Is that something you've always been? Or just tell me a bit about your mindset in sort of setting out, because you say, how have I built my followership? How have I built my engagement? How have I built my business? You effectively, as in that article and elsewhere, set out the steps that you follow.
Yeah, I mean, look, that article is a blow by blow exactly how I made $850,000 off my personal brand. Like, I don't leave anything off the table. I wish I could sit here and say that was out of the kindness of my heart. Obviously, I want people to be empowered. Like, I always say, my North Star is empowering people to be the best version of themselves, and personal branding just happens to be the vehicle in which I'm trying to deliver that message. However, I'm a capitalist, and I like money, and I have teams to pay for, and two children to feed. So, of course, everything is strategic, and I would be doing my clients a disservice if I wasn't being strategic in how I did these things, because I quite often test strategies and then apply it to clients. But the strategy behind that, which is give 100% of your knowledge away for free, is I know that 99% of people won't do it. And they'll pay us to do it if they can afford to. But in the meantime, they're doing a little bit of the things that I'm telling them to do, and they're getting some traction with that. So then I become a trusted authority in my space because they've done what I've told them to do and they've got results. So boom, all of a sudden I'm the thought leader in personal branding because Amelia told me to do this one thing. It's changed my business. Great. So when that person has gotten into a position where they can pay me to do it for them, they're going to pay me to do it because they trust me. Yeah. I'm the authority, and they've been following my advice for free. So whenever people have this thing of like, oh, but it's my idea. Okay, so every single other person that you're competing with has the same way of doing things. We change slightly, of course, but most people in personal branding do things the same way. Most people in marketing agencies do the same way. Consultancies, same thing. Accountants, exactly the same thing. The only thing that's going to differentiate you is you by giving your knowledge away for free. So people think that you're the authority. You are the best known in your space. That's why Amazon exists. Amazon is the best known. There are plenty of other e-commerce marketplaces and bookstores that are much better than Amazon, but we go to Amazon because it's the best known. Same with eBay. Same with the cars that we buy. Same with the shop that we shop at, right? Best known is much better than best. So give your knowledge away for free and you will get inbound revenue in return for sure.
That's super clear. I mean, I've done the same since I sort of left the big company in the last couple of years. Probably not at that level of clarity. I just did it because I felt the right thing to do. And I realized that people would reach out and say, I get that. I want to come with you on that, whatever journey it is on strategy or organizational sort of stuff that I tend to do, and understand some of the nuances that somebody with a bit of grey hair and so on can help you with. So you've talked about the 101 part of it. Let's go to the other end of the scale. What are the frontiers when it comes to personal branding? What are the topics you go, wow, if you're in the mastery elements of it, people should look out for or indeed practice or reach out to you and your company to do?
I think the number one blocker, if we can jump that first, is confidence. I think it's something that it doesn't matter what seat you sit in, what level of seniority, where you are in your career. Some of us really struggle to put ourselves out there. And it's funny because when we think about it in context, we're quite often happy to put ourselves out there on like a Facebook or an Instagram, right? Because that feels familiar. It feels usual. It feels like trodden path. We can see the map there and that's okay. But when it comes to something in a more professional setting like LinkedIn or writing articles for something or putting yourself out there for speaking gigs or whatever, we have this sort of million-year-old brain that goes, oh my God, don't do that because we're going to get shunned by the tribe. And if they shun us, we're going to get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. Like that's like the fight or flight thing that gets switched on. But the reality is like, you have to find a way to overcome that. It's the same. I always liken it to when I first started out in sales. And I'll never forget my first day. They gave me a list of 100 people and a phone and said dial. And I was like, well, what do I say to them? They were like, I don't know, figure it out. And I remember making that first phone call and thinking, oh my God, this is horrific. Knots in my stomach. Like I thought I was going to puke. It was awful. By the 100th phone call that day, I was like, this is a piece of pit. Like I got this. Like this is great. And it's the same thing with personal branding. It's the same thing with overcoming anything. It's the same thing with a career, with a job, with a learning to drive, with a having a child, learning like all of these things. When you first start something, it's very difficult. Yes. It's very uncomfortable because it's new. And it should be uncomfortable. If it was comfortable, everyone would do it, and then there would be no competitive advantage. But if you can push through that, and a lot of what we do as an agency is coaching, and it's not in like part of our service necessarily, but it's like, come on, hold our hand. Like, we're coming on this with you. It's a joint venture. This is not us delivering a service and making you look silly. This is about us positioning you in the right way to gain momentum for your career, for your business, for your life.
Yes.
And I think if you can get over that ego piece, everything becomes easy, because you no longer are tied to validating yourself through the opinions of strangers. You're tied to what value can I give strangers? And that naturally will repel people that you don't want to attract and attract people that you do. So as an agency, we do a lot of that with clients. We do the delivery piece of it as well. So as how we operate is very much how I suggest other people operate, which is we take what we call cornerstone content. So we'll conduct an interview like this, David, or we'll get them on a podcast, or we'll do speaking gigs, whatever it might be. And we'll pull out the content from that long form piece and then distribute it at a micro level to all the channels in which they need to be on in order to achieve their goals. So we've identified the audience. Where is that audience? They're on TikTok, they're on LinkedIn, they're on whatever. And then we push that content out to reach those people, which then in turn attracts more content creation opportunities, because people want you on their podcast, people want you to do. So now the machine moves again. And it just means it's a very efficient way of doing things, whether you're working with an agency or not, because you only have to work one thing and then everything else comes out of that. It also means your core messaging is always the same, which is really important for consistency. So yeah, we're very much I always say we're not a personality agency or a social media agency. We're a personal branding agency. So that means everything from social media distribution to speaking gigs, talent management, getting on stages, getting on TV, doing your PR, writing your articles, creating your personal brand website, putting you in rooms with people, even on a micro level. Like, what rooms should you be in to achieve that goal that we identified when we first started working together?
It's very intentional, isn't it? It's very intentional in terms of where and how you spend, who you spend time with, where you do it. And I remember one of your posts, which sort of spliced down the content you developed on a couple of hours into different elements. And my first reaction was I thought that was really clever. And secondly, I looked to myself thinking, I've done the equivalent of the 2 hours and I've only used about 5% of it. What a waste of effort. And then I go on to the next one because I think, I've done that. And I haven't even started.
Yeah.
But going back to your point about confidence, I mean, that piece around, the more you put yourself out there, even if you're, experienced or, reasonable age, you have to be ready to take the challenge, take the criticism. How do you, apart from just doing more and more of it, which I get the point, how can you steel yourself? If you're somebody who thinks, look, I get it, I'm clear on my objectives, I want to put myself out there, I've got something to say on things that are relevant to my business, but you know what? I don't want to have that volley of challenge and criticism and so on. How do you develop more assurance and confidence in yourself?
Gosh, it's a big question. Look, I think if your worry about other people's opinions is something that you're like, well, I don't want to deal with that, then personal branding is not for you. And I think that's okay. That's okay. Like, you don't have to build your personal brand, right? But your opportunities will be inevitably better if you do, because you are putting yourself into rooms that you otherwise wouldn't have access to. And what I mean by that is, people are talking about me, and I don't mean this in an arrogant way at all, but I know it for fact. People talk about me in rooms that I would never be able to get into. Like, my name was mentioned in the Sky Bet boardroom before I worked with them. My name was mentioned in the Paddy Power boardroom before I met them, because they were talking about getting someone in to help with a specific thing. And someone said, I know this woman that I've been following on LinkedIn. We should be speaking to her, blah, blah, blah. That is why personal branding is really powerful, because it gets you into rooms where strangers are talking about you. So in order to achieve that, you have to be okay with some people not liking it. And that's fine. That's okay. You don't like everyone. So it's very unlikely that everyone's going to like you. And
it's not a big change. It's not a big change in your life. It's just a different platform.
Yeah.
In a sense, you make choices who you spend your time with day in, day out, and you recognize you might say things out of turn. It's the same thing, but just in a different context.
It is. And I think if you start reframing this sort of branding exercise as, oh my God, people don't like me and this is hurting my feelings, into, great, now I don't get to worry about working with the people I don't want to work with. Now it's a filter.
Yes.
It means that the people that are in your network are exactly who you want in your network, and you're not having to worry about qualifying the people that you don't want to work with. Because how annoying would it be if you got all of these inbound opportunities, which you won't, by the way, if you're vanilla, because it just doesn't happen. You need 100 people to love you, not 1,000 people to think you're all right. Because the all right people won't buy from you, but the ones that love you will. And you need to have a bit of personality for that. But to my point, you might get all these inbound leads, but you might qualify them out straight away because they're not who you want to work with. Whereas if you're out there and you're putting personality out there and you're mirroring the type of person that you want to attract, that qualification process is done. They've already qualified themselves into working with you. You know that you want to work with them because that's the type of person you're attracting. And basically the final end of funnel conversation that you're having, whether it is hiring someone or you being hired or actual business that you're generating, is, okay, so when should we do it? Where should we sign? At that point, it's just closing.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. I mean, you're sharing your wisdom for commercial reasons and so on, as you said, capitalist, I think you call yourself, which is good, understandable.
I'm a good capitalist. I think people really misunderstand the capitalist concept. If you read a magazine, that was written by a capitalist. If you drink Starbucks, that is capitalism.
I agree. I remember talking with James Timpson a long time ago, Timpsons, and he said, look, we do lots of things from public purpose, in terms of obviously reoffenders in the business and various other things. He goes, but we have to make money in order to do it. Just to be really clear.
That's why I can give all this information away free, because I am making money.
Absolutely. Right? So where do you get your inspiration from?
To be honest, I don't really sit down and go, what am I going to talk about? I just say stuff, record everything, document everything. Every meeting I have, every opportunity like this, David, that I have, I take, because for me, this is content, right? Like, hopefully we'll get a copy of this at some point and I can turn it into something.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so for me, it's less about where's my inspiration from and more about just getting involved and meeting people and I consume so much content. I read every night. I've always got like 2 or 3 books on the go. I'm reading Crazy Like Us at the minute. Great book. But like anything that I can consume that I find interesting, whether it be business, psychology, Jordan Peterson, anything I can get my hands on. I'm just
a really wide range.
Sponge. And that inspires everything, because you'll read something and go, oh, that's quite interesting. Why is that interesting? And then you can document that down. And if you're struggling to kind of work out how you can do the value piece, because that's kind of, here's my opinion on stuff. It's not necessarily related to personal branding, right? But what you can do is think about, okay, so what are some of the most frequently asked questions I get? Like what do clients say to me all the time? And if I'm in a client meeting, should I be jotting down some notes of things that they're saying to me that I can then turn into content? You can also use platforms like Answer the Public, which means you can type in certain search terms and it tells you what people are searching for with that particular topic. So that's also very useful.
It's looking at the situations you're in, the content you're ingesting, as it were, through lots of different lenses and lots of different uses, and that's the skill. I think a lot of people get into sort of tunnel vision, if you like, really sort of, it's one use, one platform, one place. And one of the things I really enjoy about your work, many things, but one of the things I enjoy is you call out some management myths. Or management or leadership or business myths we all hear about and we all nod through. I mean, the classic one being you can have a really cool work-life balance when, for example, when you're a startup entrepreneur. Like you said, absolutely not. You have to work your ass off, right? That's one. What's your favorite at the moment that you'd like to debunk?
Oh God, I'm so bored of it's kind of the same thing that you've just said. Let's
not talk about it then. Let's talk about another thing. I don't want to bore you.
No, I'm so bored of hearing people say you can have balance. That's what I'm saying. Right, I'm not saying this question's boring. I'm saying the balance thing is so boring. Like, what I mean by that is it upsets me that there are people out there who are in a position of influence and power saying, don't work too hard because you might make yourself unwell. They're saying that because they can afford to say that.
Now they can. Either they've forgotten or they're lying about what happened when they were.
It's all a lie. I know that for a fact. Like, I watch all these people who are quote unquote influencers in business, for example, and they're saying, don't walk too hard. Take your relationship with you more seriously than you are. Fine. These are all great things. But if you're telling that to a 23-year-old who is on minimum wage and is trying to make their way in the world, and you're telling them that employers should care more about their feelings than their revenue, they're going to get a very nasty shock because they're not going to be able to hold a job down. And then that has very real world implications on that person's life, because you've instilled this idea in them that they can do whatever they want, but you can't do whatever you want. I can't do whatever I want, and I'm an employer. There are very clear things that I have to do to make sure that my team have what they need. And so this concept of like, have balance, start at 9, finish at 4, do a 4-day work week, go and work in Bali, like, that's great. But if you want to achieve those things, you're going to have to work hard. And the people that are kind of the biggest sort of advocates for this balance piece are the ones who, as I said, can afford to do that. They are the ones who are
They need it.
balanced because they're millionaires. They're sitting in their ivory
Yeah.
castle going, come and join us. Oh no, sorry, we forgot to put the ladder back down. Like, you know, it's all a fallacy. I really hate that narrative, and I try and be the sort of voice of slightly provocative reason with these things, because I feel like we're lying to a generation of people who, unfortunately, this narrative has also been paired with COVID, where people have been kind of allowed to do what they sort of want because employers didn't really know how to navigate that situation. You know, we were told to work from home and then we had to come back in, blah, blah, blah. So people have joined the workforce, particularly younger people, at a time where you could work from home and you could do all these things and this was allowed. But actually, that's not real life. And we're getting back to a point now where there's mass layoffs, there's mass redundancies, there's people getting pay cuts because of the behavior that people had during COVID. And I think people are starting to realize now that this whole you can do whatever you want, only work for an employer that will let you be flexible and blah, 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 is actually not how the world works. There is some boundaries that need to be in place. And of course, work for someone who you enjoy working for. Of course, if you need to work from home one day a week because that's what's best for you, fine. There are sensibilities in these things. But if you feel as though you can be 100% remote and only do 2 hours of work a day and you can be all balanced and when things are stressful, take time off work, like life is stressful. It's not meant to be easy. And I think telling people that it shouldn't be stressful is setting them up ultimately for failure.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's a really good point. I'm curious about your strategy and your approach to your own business, Clout. Are you a visionary strategist or are you an emergent one? And what I mean by that is you're thinking 10 years out, this is what I want the business to be? Or are you more of a, obviously you have a sense of where you want to go, but more of a, let's rock and roll as we go through the next few months and years? What on each end of the spectrum, where would you put yourself?
When I first started the business, I literally just wanted to get paid for doing something I enjoyed doing. And so it was very much like, we'll see how this goes. Like there was I wish I could say there was like some big grand strategy of we were going to be this agency, we were going to have an office in Mayfair, blah, 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 blah. Like it really wasn't, unfortunately, that. It was just, let's just see if this works. Now, for the last sort of 12 months, I've had a very clear goal of year 7 of what we need to achieve and what's going to happen by year 7 and how much money we need to be making by year 7 and what kind of business we want to be by year 7 and what kind of teams we want to have by year 7. And so everything is geared towards the end of year 7, which is to the detail of, you know, we want to be doing things like Clout Originals, like producing shows and YouTube things and podcasts, and whatever. Brilliant. I want to be the IMG of personal branding for entrepreneurs and C-level people. Like, imagine if, David, we could create a show for you and this podcast became a weekly show that you did live streamed on YouTube and you had 20 million views, everything. That becomes a very valuable product because then you want sponsorship, you want guests coming on your show who then get all these things. So we want to be the company that does that. So we're going to have studios, we're going to have this, that, and the other. But there is a very intentional and clear goal to get the business to that point for year 7. And everyone in the business has a plan personally of where they're going to be at year 7, which means that they're really bought in. They want to go on.
And when you recruit people, because you have loads of applications for your new, you know, your open positions. I presume you tell the people about, you know, the plans and the year 7.
Yes,
that's intentional.
Yeah,
again.
Yeah. And it's one of the.
Where's the year 7 come from?
If I'm honest, I have a lot of friends who are far more intelligent than me and far more successful than me, and who are just better at everything. And as I said earlier, I'm a real absorber, and I'm the kind of person that if you're in a room with someone who's smart, I just. Tell me, let me ask you all the things so I can get all your intelligence and shortcut it. And a few people that I know who have scaled very successful agencies, you know, I'm talking hundreds of millions of pounds businesses in actually one of them, $1 billion business agency. They told me that when you get to year 7, the business is going to be outgrowing you. And you are going to have to do something to keep that rocket ship going, whether it be sell, take a PE deal, whatever it might be. But something's going to have to happen around that stage of business growth to get you to that next level. And so I just want to get it to that point, and then we can then we have options, right? But unless we get to that point of making the revenue number that we need to be making and having the people, blah, 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 we don't have those options. So year 7, we need to do these things, and then cool. I might go, actually, I want to do this for another 7 years, and that's great. But at least we have the options.
Yeah. It's a point in time when you can make some decisions and work out how to scale it or restructure whatever you want to do. I have to say, you come across as very, very intelligent. It may just be a different type of intelligence to your friends. Just to be clear, there's lots of forms of
Thank you.
intelligence. So,
I'm an absorber.
well, that's very intelligent. I mean, I'm curious about your philosophy. You talked about living your life for the plot,
Yes.
and not the ending in one specific context. But I'm just curious about that, because I try and with guests unpick not only what they're doing, the practices, the methods, and so on, but how they think. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So live your life for the plot, not the ending. I say that all the time. And in a sense, what that basically means is stop worrying about what the goal is and just live now. I think we spend so much time in our lives, and I appreciate I'm 32, right? So I've got so much more of my life left to live, but I've done a lot of things that a lot of 32-year-olds haven't done. Like I've had multiple business failures. I've had a marriage failure. I have 2 children. Like I'm at a stage in my life that probably my peers won't be at for another 10 years. And so
Yes.
I've learned the lessons that a lot of people in their 40s are now going like, live your life now. And my people my age are going, whatever, I've got all the time. And I'm like, no, you don't.
I know the feeling.
But I guess my thought process and my ideology, for lack of a better word, with that is stop looking behind you and stop worrying about what happened. Stop looking at the future and going, what if I just do this, if I just do that, if I just do that, and just sit where you are now and relax and be happy with what you've got right now. Because we spend so much time forward planning, and of course things are important. Like we need to have a plan. We need to have a goal. We know that a lot of mental health bad mental health anyway can come from lack of goals and lack of purpose. We know this, but don't not live in your life now because you're so hell-bent on getting out of it, because this person that you're sitting in with right now, you is the person that's going to get you there. So unless you're looking after this person and making sure that this person is happy and content and has all the things that she or he needs, that future will never happen. And that is for business, that is for people, that's for individuals, that's for children. Enjoy that. Don't go, I can't wait till they're this age. No, enjoy them now. I can't wait till the business is year 7. No, enjoy it now. I can't wait till I'm the manager. No, enjoy not being a manager, because you can't be one unless you experience what you're experiencing right now. And another part of all of this is say, do it for the plot. Just say yes. Just say yes. What's the worst that can happen? I started Clout with £1,400, I think, in my bank account, and my mortgage payment due 2 weeks' time. And I thought, you know what? No plan B. Let's just see what happens. What's the worst that's going to happen? I know it sounds terrible, but what's the worst that's going to happen? I'll miss a mortgage payment. Okay, I can deal with that. We can come back from that. Bad credit score, I can come back from that. Maxed out credit card, I can come back from that. I can't come back from dying on my deathbed and going, damn, I wish I'd done that thing.
That's so wise. Gosh, what a wise soul. What a wise soul. Wow. And that's very, I mean, it's taken me, I'm 49 this year, and it's probably taken me the last 6 months to realize some of that stuff. So I'm feeling, anyway, that's my own work I need to do. That's a different topic for another therapy session. I don't have a therapist.
I do. Maybe that's why I'm how I am.
Perhaps there's something in there. Yeah, he says to himself quickly. I mean, you've alluded to this earlier as we draw to a close. I mean, you talked about impact. Just talk about the impact you want to have on the world around you.
Gosh, loaded question. If I'm honest, if I picture myself at that 90-year-old Amelia, and I look back on what I want to have seen do in my life, my thing is I want people to take accountability for their life. Like that, at my very core, that's what I want people to do. Not because I feel like you should be responsible and no one should help you. Quite the opposite. I think when you take accountability for your life, that is where you can start to progress. That is where you can ask for the right help. That is where you can empower yourself to do things that you otherwise just wouldn't do because you're waiting for someone to come and save you. No one's going to come and save you. No one's coming. But if you can take accountability for that, it doesn't matter what situation you're in, you can find your way out of that, whether it be to ask for the right help, to approach the right person, to quit that job, start that job, leave that person, marry that person, like whatever it might be. But you are the only person in your life who's always going to be there for you. And so I want people to realize that before they get to my age, or 40 or 50 or 60, which is often when we come to these conclusions. And sometimes we've missed out on time that we could have been implementing that as a strategy to get ahead. And I think personal branding for me has been the vehicle to kind of deliver that message of, hey, I want to empower you to take control of your life. And if you build your personal brand like I have, you can be in control of your life because you can create your own destiny. You can create your own opportunities. You can create rooms for yourself that you otherwise do not have access to. And the world is flattening now. The world is, if you have an internet connection, you can build a personal brand. There's nothing stopping you from being able to reach people in New York, in Madrid, in, wherever, no matter where you are in the world. So that's what I want. That's what I want my legacy to be, is empowering people to take accountability of their life and doing the best they can do for themselves.
That's brilliant. That's very inspiring. And my last question for you is, when Amelia is having her best day, your absolutely best, most brilliant day, I mean, you're absolutely knocking it out of the park, what fuels it? What or whom fuels it?
It's funny. I just did this exercise with one of my employees about 20 minutes before we started recording. I said, this is an exercise I did to work out the answer to this question. The first thing I wrote down was what triggers me. What are the things that make me not do great in a day? Like, what are the things that make me feel stressed, make me feel anxious, like all the things. And then the next thing I did was write down what I enjoy, what brings me joy, what makes me happy, what makes me feel productive, like all the things. And then at the end of it, I built a routine around the things that bring me joy and make me productive, not around the things that trigger me. And so the things that are non-negotiables for me are making my bed every single morning. Like, that is a non-negotiable. I don't care whether it's Sunday, whether I have to wake up at 3 a.m. for a flight. Make your bed every single day. I try and work out as much as humanly possible. I would love to say I do it every day. I don't, because I have 2 small children and 12 other children, which are not my children to look after. So it's sometimes that falls off the radar, but the exercise thing is really, really important to me. And when I'm the best of myself, the pattern is always wake up, exercise, get something done straight away. And also, this sounds terrible, but I don't eat carbs during the week because my body doesn't digest them very well. And whenever I eat potatoes or pasta or whatever, I feel slow and tired and whatever. But when I sit to lean protein and vegetables, I feel like I'm on top of the world. But I eat more. I eat 4 or 5 meals a day, but I feel fantastic. I look great. I've got loads of energy. Like, I feel really fantastic. Another non-negotiable for me is looking good. So when I'm out, like, I take great pride in what I wear. I take great pride in what my hair looks like and how my makeup is and what shoes I'm wearing, whatever. Not because I necessarily care about what other people think, but I care how I feel about myself. And I think when you take pride in how you look, that transcends outwardly to people, and that then attracts good energy to you, which then in turn makes you feel better and all of those things. And then the final piece of all of it, I guess, is like just having a moment of joy in the day, laugh. Like, I'm always laughing at something or listening to a podcast or, watching some silly thing on YouTube or introducing Bloodhound Gang to one of our, which is, I don't know if you remember them, but they were just like the naughtiest band in 2000. One of our interns who was born in 2001 had never heard of them before. So I took great pleasure yesterday taking them through one of their albums. And he was like, oh my gosh, this was on the radio. And I was like, yeah, we used to listen to this. But finding joy, I think, is really important. Accomplishment, joy, and looking after your body is, I think, all very obvious things, but if I was to say my best days, all include all of those things.
What a brilliant conversation. I mean, you are intentional, deliberate, you are fiercely intelligent in whether you believe it or realize it, you are. That's my view. And whatever your therapist encourages you to think. You have a plan, you have an idea, I understand personal branding being the vehicle to what impact you want to achieve. I wish you all the best with it. I mean, you pack so much wisdom into such a short amount of time. I'm very, very grateful. So thank you, Amelia.
Well, thank you.
That was another edition of Lancefield on the Line. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Please do check out the other episodes in the series. Check out my YouTube channel and the podcast, and be generous. Give me a wonderful rating as you do so. Amelia, thank you ever so much again.
Thank you for having me.